Welcome to Whose Story Is It? Where extraordinary lessons are hidden within everyday stories. Join us today in revealing the untold stories within a business leader's success. Enjoy as we uncover the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Whose Story Is It? So today, this is a really unique story. You're probably gonna drop your mouth a couple times when you're listening to this. So thanks for dropping by today and listening to another episode. But you know what? Let's just get this started. Let's just give us a little introduction, my friend, and tell us what you want to say.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me. Introduction. My story really starts actually in Europe. I'm originally from a small country in Eastern Europe. Grew up there in the 90s. There was a bunch of unrest happening. Eventually turned into full-fledged war. And my story starts there. And I think a lot of who I am today really is from the lessons and the experiences that me and my family went through during that time. And I'll fast forward a little bit. I'm happy to kind of dive back into some of that time, but then my story transitions from escaping war to experiencing the life of a refugee and bouncing around refugee camps to eventually winning the golden ticket, which is the ability to come to the United States. And so eventually I was able to come to the US and I really start a life here and understand what life is in America. And then eventually just really figure out a way to give back to this community the way it gave back to me and the opportunities that it gave me.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sure we'll get some good pieces of content here. Just we talked obviously before we turned on the record button, and there's some really great stuff that I'm really looking forward to hearing. Here's the first question that I ask every single guest. Every single guest gets this question. Awesome. How did you earn your first dollar that wasn't paid to you by a relative?
So first dollar I ever earned, funny story. We were trying to figure out a way to make money, and I was 14, and so my dad and I went out to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we were working under the table to try to get some extra cash. Sure. And I was working at a sewage pump manufacturing plant, and I was making pumps for them. Awesome. And I just sat in a warehouse, made pumps, and then they would pay me. But the funny thing that is I then would wait there until my dad finished and he was doing other things.
Sure.
And so during the rest of the time, they taught me how to make things like tater guns, like potato cans.
Sure.
And so I feel like I made my first dollar there, but I also learned some things that I've never used again. And then we would launch those potatoes over the highway in Baton Rouge. And it was a really interesting time looking back as a 14-year-old. But yeah, that was my first dollar ever made.
That's awesome. Awesome. The potato guns, man. The potato guns. Idaho, obviously, they have a lot of potatoes in Idaho.
Yeah.
And I was actually interviewing somebody a couple weeks ago, and he's from Idaho, and he was telling a story, not during the podcast, actually before we ever turned on record, about a potato gun. Like a potato gun that's a thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, and it could really mess you up. Like those things are really powerful. So yeah.
That's great. That's a great story. I love that. Well, you're the first person I've heard that from, as when I asked that question, like, how did you earn your first dollar?
There you go.
Hey, here's a question that will kind of take us. I want to hear it. I want to hear the answer to this.
Yeah.
How would you have changed your childhood? And when I say childhood, say 5 from 15, 18 years old. If you could change one thing, how would you change that one thing?
Oof. That's a really loaded question. Because I would say in a lot of ways, like those were probably the hardest and darkest days in my family's history. And so I would say it's easy to say I wish we didn't have the loss. I ended up losing a lot of maybe you're hoping for a lighter answer here, but like
no, I absolutely know what's coming. I think it's a pretty dark period. So
yeah, and like it's just reality, right? It's just like we can't change our history, but we can change the meaning it has in our lives today. And so I look back at that time, and I, of course, wish I could take away some of the pain and then the struggles, specifically for my parents and what they had to go through, and the folks that we lost in our lives. And at the same time, it's hard because like that those times shaped who I am today.
Hmm.
Um, I think probably the one thing I would change is I wish I would have spent more time with my grandparents. And they were unfortunately killed during the war, and I wish I would have had more time to spend with them because I just
Yeah.
don't have a lot of memories of them today.
Yeah. So you did they live close to you, or were they close, like same city kind of thing?
Yeah, they lived, I would say like 5 miles away, and unfortunately, that 5 miles made the difference
Yeah.
between our journeys. Yeah,
Yeah. We'll take a 180-degree turn on
yeah,
this.
yeah.
What do you do for fun?
I love playing soccer.
Okay.
That's fun for me. I used to play, fairly seriously, and now I'm realizing and trying to learn how to still play, even though my body can't
Skills.
do what my mind thinks it can do. But that
Sure.
that for me is fun. I love every aspect of it. Yeah.
uh,
What about you, Mike? Other than
that was a good
drinking
question.
wine, what do you like to do?
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, anyone that knows me knows that drinking wine is part of our just our life here in Walla Walla, and has been even when we didn't live here. But I do like to drink wine. Like I said, my wife's a sommelier, so we do a lot of that, and she's super smart, obviously, about that. So I enjoy just listening to her talk about wine sometimes because she knows stuff that, of course, I don't know. And I think anything athletic,
Nice.
anything I can move. I still go to the gym pretty frequently. I play basketball once a week still, so I'm still pretty active, and I just love I love with one of my favorite exercise. I just like to go out on a bike by
Yeah.
myself and ride. And of course, around here it's just out in the country, and there's more animals than there is people. So I love that part where I can just go out and ride my bike for an hour, 2 hours, and just
Yeah.
me and the animals, and I love that. That's
That's
a
cool.
really really great feeling for me. So thanks for asking, though. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you
that.
bet.
Um, what is thus far in your life? What's your greatest accomplishment?
Gosh, I think probably um, building the team that I have currently. I think, and then I can share more about that later. But just really bringing a group of people together that are passionate, committed, and incredibly smart, and creating a space that they can all thrive and feel like they belong. I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of
Oh,
so far.
very cool.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, that is something to be very proud of. It's not easy. Let's
Yeah,
just say
yeah.
that.
I mean, I think it's
It's
like that balance of like how do you create something that you have high impact and are successful in business, but also how do you also balance the experience of, for me, like my biggest customer, which is my team, and make sure that it's a place that they can really thrive as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who's your best friend? Who is that?
I think my wife's probably my best friend.
Okay.
Um,
What's
I,
your wife's name?
yeah, her name is Therese. So
Therese. So if
yeah,
I called Therese right now,
yeah,
said, "Hey, Therese, what's your husband's best asset?" What would she tell me?
she'd probably say my patience.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
And
I
if I
am.
said, "What's your worst asset?" What would she say?
My lack of follow through on the things she wants me to do. So I'm also very patient in doing what I'm supposed to do.
That's to do. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's good. I like to always hear the first part, but I actually
yeah,
enjoy much more the
of
second part.
course. You set me up for that.
Totally, totally. I love that. Um, if tell me about kind of the things that you find important or have learned to be important. Give me a couple things that you've learned in the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years of operating a company, starting a company, all the things
Yeah.
you've done thus far. What are a couple clues or a couple things that you would say if I was starting a company for the first time? What would you say? Hey, Mike, here's the things you need to do.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's hard. And I think part of the problem, like I think it's just setting some realistic expectations, because like we see the BS of like all the people that have been successful, and maybe people
Sure.
are like listening to me right now and be like, oh, like he's figured it out. But like the grind on a day-to-day basis is tough. And so I would say like being realistic, like it's not actually like that sexy. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
Actually, it's not sexy at all.
it's not. It's painful. What's the quote? It's like you're constantly just looking into the abyss, being like, "Are we going to survive?" Like it's kind of like how a startup works.
Yeah.
I think the other piece that I didn't realize, I would say, is how lonely it is, and
Oh.
maybe that's why so many people have a co-founder
Hmm.
to share that. And I think in hindsight, I wish maybe I would have had a co-founder, because it
Yeah.
does feel isolating. Um, but I think the other thing that I've learned is like your biggest asset is the people you're doing this with. And it doesn't matter whether you're building products, you're building programs, whatever it is you're selling, or it's ultimately like the people that you're able to bring along with you as a leader are going to define your success or failure.
Hmm.
And so I think for me, like one of the things I've thought a lot about is like, why would people want to follow me as a leader?
Hmm.
And am I creating a bold enough vision and creating an environment that people say, yes, I want to follow that. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something I didn't realize uh, to the extent it needs to be when I started.
Do you would you consider yourself a natural leader, or is it something that's all learned?
I think, I mean, leadership is both, right? I think there's some innate aspects that certain people have, but it's also something that everyone can learn. Um, and I was actually listening to something today, because I had a colleague who today was his last day, and I was sharing a little about his leadership, and really what leadership to me is the ability to enable and bring people together around a shared value during uncertain times and situations. And so I think we can learn how to bring people together. We can learn how to communicate a vision. And then I think also as leaders, like we can learn how to navigate the uncertainty that comes with life. And so most of it I think can be learned, but I do think there are certain traits that folks have that maybe increase their ability to be successful in certain parts of that, but also
Hmm.
if overused can be a detriment as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on
yeah.
that. I mean, you've been doing this and you've met so many leaders. Like, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I've been lucky or unlucky, depending how you want to look at it. Start, 6 companies over the years and sell a couple of those and failed miserably once, horribly bad, horribly bad. And so I think, you know, if someone walked up to me and said, "Hey, Mike, what's the most important thing about being a leader?" And I would say self-awareness, like understanding
Yeah,
where you are, like what are your traits and strengths and weaknesses. Like you need to understand that stuff. Like you can not fake that. Like that's, I think that's the, and honestly, and I do, a fair amount of coaching. I have a mastermind group. I do lots of stuff with CEO stuff, and the good ones get it. They get it. They get
yeah,
that they need to know who they are, and what I
yeah,
call they're comfortable in their skin. Like you meet people and you're like that person, he or she is comfortable in their skin. You can just feel it, right? And so the people that are not comfortable in their skin are the ones that are normally, at least this is a general rule, but those are the ones I see failing as leaders. They may be a
yeah,
CEO, good CEO, but they may be crappy leaders. Like there's
yeah,
people I've met, many people that are good CEOs, meaning they get stuff done, but they're just crappy leaders.
yeah,
Like no one really wants to be with them. All those kind of things, which is no fun, but it does happen. It happens. But yeah, I think someone said to me, "What's the one thing I need self awareness?"
interesting. Yeah, I think that makes total sense, because
Yeah,
I think part
yeah.
of the things that oftentimes I see, and I think about this myself, is like it's actually I'm the biggest risk to my company. And if I'm unable to grow
Sure.
and evolve at
Yeah.
the same pace as our company,
Everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm holding it back. And so it's like constantly thinking about like how do you scale as a leader? What are the things that you need to be working on? And then when I see folks that are like, I made it, I'm like, oh, you're in trouble, because what got you here isn't going to get you there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So I think the
totally different.
self-awareness piece makes total sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's good that you say like I'm the biggest risk, right? I'm the one that can really mess this up well,
Yeah,
and which is true. You can mess this up the most than anyone else. Like you
yeah,
can mess it up,
yeah,
right? and the other side too, you can also
Have the
influence
biggest
it. Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
What's
So
what's
yeah,
the
no, it's
Spider-Man? What's the Spider-Man quote there?
yeah, exactly.
With great
So,
power comes great responsibility, and it's like,
there you
yeah,
go. Yep, yep. Um, is that Spider-Man?
I think it's like it feels like a Peter Parker thing to say.
um, what's a mistake that you've made that what's a mistake that you've made that you've learned the most from? And that doesn't mean it had to be a business mistake. It can be a personal mistake.
Yeah,
But like, what is like? I did this and I learned a ton. Like, what is that thing?
yeah. Um, Gosh, trying to think through on this. I mean, I would say one that comes to mind right now is, you know, involves again people, and I think probably like a big mistake that I learned from is early on I had a leader that I think had a ton of potential, and I did not invest enough in their growth, and they ended up not succeeding, and then
Sure.
eventually I had to let them go, but that was completely on me. Like I put him in a position and didn't give him the tools and support to truly like have a chance at succeeding, and then the results that we got I shouldn't have been surprised by. And so
Sure.
I think that's been a big lesson for me is like you can expect greatness and like a high bar for folks, but also what are you doing to make sure that they can achieve it? Like what are you owning in their journey? And that one is one that haunts me a little bit because I wish I had a second chance at that, because I think that person would have really and could have thrived at our company, um, if I had invested the amount of time and energy and provided the support I think I should have to give him that opportunity.
Yeah. 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 Yep. No, I mean, you know, I think understanding, excuse me, understanding that you have that ability, meaning the ability to put people in a successful place to, a place to be successful. Again, I think that's a thing that is not, it doesn't come natural for people. Like
Yeah.
that's something you have to think through, right? That's not fifth grade level thinking.
No. No.
Like
Yeah.
you have to think through that stuff to get that far.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, because I mean,
definitely so.
I had this situation a couple of days ago where I heard somebody in a meeting say, "Hey, like I need you to go and put together a strategy for this." And the person, you could tell in their face, they look completely lost. And I
Sure.
pulled the person aside after. I was like, you just asked them to build a strategy. Like, have you taught them, or do you know that they can build a strategy? Do you know what that means? And they're like, well, I'm not sure. And I'm like, you should probably check in on that before we ask people to do things. Like, are we actually like jumping in the deep end with them and helping them learn first?
Yeah.
Because it sounds great to be like, go do this, but like,
Sure.
well, guess what? The results you're going to get are going to be probably pretty crappy, and we shouldn't be surprised by it if we're not investing the time to teach people how to fish so they could actually do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Tell me an embarrassing moment in your life.
Oh, so when I first came to the U.S., I didn't speak English,
Sure.
and I
Now,
kept
now,
going
now, now, make sure you didn't speak any English, or
like
you spoke
any
broken
English.
English,
No, like
and just
any
no
English.
English. Okay,
No English.
okay.
I learned English by watching The Simpsons, and it's also
Come
the
on,
reason.
The
Yeah,
Simpsons.
and it's also the reason I don't have an accent, or at least people tell me I don't have an accent. Everyone in my family, I have an older
Sure.
sibling, hard accent. I think I like
Yeah.
watch The Simpsons and like try to speak the same way as like Bart would
Sure.
and Homer would. So that's how I
Okay.
learned, which I'm
That's
thankful
awesome.
for it. It also turns out The Simpsons can predict the future in a lot of ways, but this happened to me so when I was in elementary school, I kept going into the girls' restroom for like a week, and
Oh,
didn't realize that there were like separate
there's a girls' restroom.
restrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one time I was in there and like a group came around and all started laughing while like I'm in the
Sure.
stall.
Sure.
And so then I had to obviously like walk out and walk past them and I just like was
Yeah.
in tears, like so embarrassed. And I
Yeah.
just like called like went home because I mean we didn't have phones then, like went home and I was
Sure.
telling my parents like I don't want to live here. This is terrible.
Exactly.
Um yeah, I mean that one that's like still stains me. It's like it
That's
sticks with me.
amazing. Right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny that we the things that we remember, and then if you talk to the five people in that room or in the bathroom, they
Yeah.
probably don't even
Oh,
remember.
no
Like
chance. No chance.
they're like they don't remember some guy walking. They just it's not like life shouting where it was like for you it was like holy crap, this is the end of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like we're living different realities. Like we might be experiencing the same thing, but like um, the way we perceive it and the way like we remember those moments are completely different, which sometimes is a little concerning to me.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Hey, if we touch base a year from now, so in late September of 2025,
Yeah.
what would you like to be celebrating?
Gosh, I mean, I'll be celebrating. I mean, on a personal level, celebrating my son starting kindergarten, and
Okay,
so
that's all.
I'm
That's good
super
news.
yeah I'm super excited about that. Um, uh, I mean, I think the other piece, on just more of a professional level, I would say is um, having expanded our reach to new cities and markets.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I think some of the work that we do is universal, but it's also hyper local. And so
Uh-huh.
what we're trying to figure out is how do we scale this model that we have, that,
Yep.
I won't dive into, but like that impacts people's lives that need it the most. How do we bring this to new communities in a sustainable way? And
Yeah.
my hope and vision is in a year from now, we will have done that for at least two or three more communities.
That's great. That would be fun to celebrate that, right? That's a worthy worthy thing.
Yeah.
In your life today, like in the your how you interact with the world, are there parts of your day that you can't be 100% yourself, or you choose not to be
Yeah,
100%
that's
yourself?
such a good question. I think the answer is probably a yes, I would say. So I think about this is when I work with our team. We talk all about transparency and being authentic, but you also have to understand the situation. And so one of the things I think about, like as a leader, is every time you walk into a room, you're bringing the weather. And so there are
Oh,
times when I may have something
mhm.
going on in my personal life.
Sure.
And yes, we want to be authentic, but also you have to understand as a leader, again, that responsibility that if you show up and you're like pissed off and annoyed and short, you're
Yeah.
impacting the entire team. And so it's not that I can't be authentic, but I think I do have to understand the situation and channel how I'm showing up based
Mhm.
on how I want others to be engaging in this space.
Sure.
And so in that way, I think there's times where it's like you got to like figure out a way to whether
Yeah.
it's like
Fake it.
it's fake it or try to channel. Like if my goal here is to like bring energy or bring some motivation, then that's one thing. Or if my goal here is that I need to turn the fire or the heat up a
Hmm.
little bit, um, I have to show up differently in those situations to be able to achieve the objective that
Yep.
we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think I would say I do want to like call out like I think I have like being like I'm from a different country, but I walk
Sure.
these streets as a white man, and I think in a lot of ways like that gives me the privilege of showing up as myself um, in
Most of
almost
the
every
time.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so like I don't want to take that like overlook that and take that for granted that it's quite a privilege that I can just show up as I
Yeah.
am and not have that in the back of my mind and just be comfortable in who I am.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not again what I like to call comfortable in your skin, right? I
Yeah,
think one of the things that and I see this more in first time founders, definitely first time CEOs, where they play CEO.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? I mean, they one they've never done it, which is okay, right? I mean, if you've never played hockey, you've never played hockey.
yeah,
How do you you put me on a hockey rink? I don't know what to do. I've never been
yeah,
there. I don't.
yeah.
It's not my thing. So so you see this and they can't be them. They can't be themselves because they think they have to be. Oh, I have to know all the answers. I
Yeah,
have to I have to be the smartest man in the room. I have to be blah, 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 all these things that they've read or believed or whatever, and they've channeled themselves to be that thing. It just doesn't work that way, right?
it's a
You
recipe for
learn.
disaster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, and you learn. I mean, most people learn
yeah,
over time that I actually can be myself. I actually can say my dog died last night, and you can you know
totally.
life happens, man.
Well, and I think like the
you know,
thing is like it's actually even more important for you to do that because you're giving permission to everyone else to show up as well. And like that's what
Yeah.
you want
Yeah.
is you want people to show up as their authentic self so they can bring in their full skills and talents. And when you're saying like you got to show up a different way, they're watching you and they're going to follow suit. And
Mhm.
now suddenly you've created a culture where there is not that transparency and it's fake. And
Yeah.
it's you can't
Yeah.
build on fake and a false facade.
No.
Like that's going to
Yeah.
crumble.
Yeah. The was the first time, but it was I guess it was the first time it wasn't my company. The first time I was a president of a company that wasn't my company. Actually, the first and only time, by the way. um, um, my father passed away
Mm,
when I was there, and I had a team meeting 2 days later, and so no one knew. I didn't
yeah,
tell anyone, right?
yeah,
And so I walk in the meeting and I start talking, and I literally just started crying
mm,
because it hit me at that moment what had happened. Right? It was because I said something that my dad had said.
yeah,
You know how you say it. You know, my dad used to say it, kind of thing. My
yeah,
dad used to say, right? And I just totally broke down. I said, I'm sorry, guys, but my father passed away a couple of days ago, and I haven't told anyone, and now you know. And so that was me trying to be a CEO, president,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I wasn't being Mike, I was being the president, right? And so that was one of the things that taught me, like firsthand, like you can be who you are, like you can
yeah,
feel how you feel and still be people. I think going forward after that, people were way more open to me.
yeah,
Like they trusted me. I think they trusted me more. I mean, because I just bared it all,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there
Yeah, I
is
mean,
value in,
oh,
right?
there's huge value, and I'm sure you can probably remember and like how folks reacted in that moment
Yeah.
and how they
Oh yeah.
supported, right? And to your point, the level of camaraderie and trust and that 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 builds. Um, but again, this I think the image that we've created around like power and like having all your stuff together, like it's just like that's not reality. And I tell my team this all the time when they ask me a question. I'm like, look, I'm just making it up too. Like
Yeah.
I might be making it up and have more context and information, but like I need you to know I'm just making this up. And like so you can make it up together. Like let's make it up together. But like
Yeah.
don't ever look at me and think that I have like the answers or like there's this book here. And I think that's actually helped our team like normalize being like we have no idea what to do here, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because like one
Yeah.
of the principles we have is every problem has infinite solutions. And it's actually quite freeing to be like, there's not one answer to this problem. There's lots of answers, and we just got to go and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. What part of your day do you not like to do? And I'm talking about business, your business day.
My business day. I don't like fundraising. Yeah, and it's not for the reasons actually. Like I'll be like, I guess I'll model vulnerability there. Every time I go and ask for money, it reminds me of how poor we were.
Yeah.
And then there's a disconnect. I know I'm not asking for myself, I'm asking for the company. But it just
Sure.
reminds me of how many times my family had to go and ask for money and borrow money just to make it.
Oh,
And it's
just
just
make
this
it.
weird, like every time I'm having this conversation, like there's that pain that comes with like having
Sure.
to do that. And again, right, like in my head and logically, I know the disconnect and I can like, but nonetheless, every time I do it, there's a little bit of that like a reminder of like, yeah, I remember those days when we're just going from asking one person of money to pay the next, so we could then just keep surviving.
Keep surviving.
Um, and I just hate it. I hate every aspect of it. And people keep telling me it needs to be 30% or 50% of my job, and I'm like, listen, if you're gonna make it 50% of my job, I'm getting a new job. Like, so it ain't happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Does it suck the energy out of you? How does it affect you? Like does it make you fuzzy minded? Like what does it do to you?
yeah, it what it does is it makes me feel like we're sometimes not having an authentic conversation. And
Oh,
here's the thing, like
okay.
when, and so maybe that's what sucks the energy. Like for me, like, and what I'm appreciating about our conversation right now is like, it's a real conversation. It's not us pretending to be somebody else. And I think sometimes the power dynamics when it comes from an investor and things of that nature, it's like it feels like you're trying to show them and like
Yeah.
check the boxes that they have in their head.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the way we run our company. Like we're very data focused. We're looking at ROI, like the ROI on investments, things of that nature. And oftentimes what it feels like in these funders or investors, like they're like keep asking me like tell me the personal stories, right? And I'm happy to share personal stories, but I don't want to make the reason you invest just because I'm like telling you a sad story to pull at your heartstrings, right? I
Sure.
feel like
Sure.
we're putting like trauma in people's lives on stage to make you feel like,
Yeah.
you know, and let me be clear. There's a lot of like folks, and I think it's transitioning that like are moving away from that and see like, hey, like we're focused on impact, not just like
Yeah.
the PR aspect of it. But I think that's what sometimes is frustrating for me in those conversations is like there is this power dynamic and it feels like you are trying to sell a story as
Uh-huh.
opposed to
Yeah.
sell the impact and show the
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah. 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 Raising money is not easy. And a lot of people, and I say this, a lot of people have a hard time asking other people for money.
Yeah.
It's not a natural thing, by the way. It's just not natural. Like, it's just not natural. Like we don't do that. We especially don't do it proudly. Like
No, yeah.
as a kid, like you don't, like even when you're asked your parents for money at any kind of age, if you past 15 years old, there's probably something like I got to ask my mom for money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's not like it's not the best thing I could do, right? And so there's a thing that you have.
Yeah.
Some people are really good at it, as we've all met. Some people are really bad at it, as we've met. But it is not an easy thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Um,
just it's just not.
I think it's a cultural thing too, though, to America. Because I will say, like, I
You,
think
you think it's easier for Americans, you say,
I think
or
it's harder,
harder?
harder.
Harder.
Yeah, because I think we've created this image that you have to make it on your own.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right where I think like in my country like you have like you know what retirement is in my country.
Well,
It's your kids. Like that's retirement,
that's
right? And
retirement. Yeah,
so
yeah,
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 and so like
yeah.
the whole idea of like your money is more like communal money is different there.
Sure.
And so this idea of asking people for money is I think more common because it's going to be returned and that ask and that favor. Whereas I think here in the States we have a little bit of a different relationship
Yeah, yeah.
where like the money is like it's my money, I earned it, I made it, and it's not like hey this is like this money is here
It,
to support the community.
yeah, it's not family money, right? It's
Yeah.
it's it's yeah, it's Mike's money, or yeah, yeah. Well, hey, give us the real introduction. Tell us who you are, and give us a bit of story there.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I'm Skeltram Kelmendi. I'm the founder and CEO of Housing Connector. But really, you did hear the real story. I think
Yeah,
I can share a bit about what our team does at Housing Connector, which is help connect folks to housing using technology and micro insurance products to tap into existing housing units and help end homelessness and housing insecurity. And that is absolutely a part of my story. But really, my story is what we've been talking about, which is
yeah.
this upbringing in Kosovo, going through times where, and I'll share a story, Mike, where we were in a home, and I remember my dad bringing an older gentleman over, and I was in the bedroom, but I could hear my mom and my dad getting in an argument, and my mom saying, like, how do we know we'll be safe? Like, what if he tells people where we are? And
Oh,
my dad's response being, um, just because we're scared, we don't stop helping people. And like that's as I think about my journey, and I learned two things in that moment. One, I learned that we were in hiding, which I didn't realize.
which you didn't realize.
I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
realize, and that's the incredible blessing that my parents gave me, which is this protection in these dark times. But two, this really important lesson that no matter where you're in, you can always help
yeah.
and you can always support. And I think that's really my journey is thinking about how do I take those experiences and the number of folks that have again supported me and now use it in my day-to-day work and run an organization and build a team that is out there committed to helping support folks who are experiencing housing insecurity, who are struggling to have a second chance at a home and a pathway out of poverty. Um, and really like the story around who I am as a professional and my title pales in comparison to what's gotten me here today, which is all those life experiences.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you happen to know Jonathan Kumar?
I do. Yeah, with Samaritan.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good. That's good.
Yeah, him and I
Um,
were at a meeting a few weeks ago, and I think it's fascinating and amazing to see the work that they're doing of just bringing the
yeah.
humanity back to our
Yeah.
streets.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was, I'm still on the board, but yeah, he's done a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. My wife and I started an organization called a nonprofit called Survive the Streets, 24 years ago,
Oh wow.
and we used to help people. This was a long time ago, in the streets of Seattle. We would let's drive around and give them stuff.
Yeah.
That's we did. We did that on Thanksgiving Day, and we did that for years and years and years and years. And so that's how I met Jonathan Kumar, because he was trying to do this technology thing, and I built some kind of tools, just being a technology guy. Yeah, he's done some really great work over
Yeah.
the several years. I mean, he's really figured it out the last couple of years, but he struggled for many years. But yeah, it's a good mission.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, why did you were saying 20 plus years ago you started that. Like, what drove you to do that?
You know, good question. What did drive me to do that? Um, I think I'm fortunate. I think I'm fortunate. I think I've been gifted. I've been gifted lots of things that people don't get gifted, like lots of things, like
Yeah.
lots of things. Um, and I know people are not as lucky.
Yeah.
Bottom line, so I think then I should share what I have and help people get what they want, and whether I can help them or do it myself, whatever. But yeah, I think it's partly that I feel. And here's a story. I'll when I lived in LA for a bit, about a year and a half, almost, yeah, about a year and a half, between moving from Scottsdale to LA, then to Seattle. And this was, would have been like 96, 97 in there.
Okay.
So I volunteered at a blind academy, they taught the blind,
Yeah.
right? I went in and volunteered because I wanted to be with people who couldn't see me,
Hmm.
because I'd been given things because I was a good looking guy, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to see for myself if I could be still a good guy in front of their eyes,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
They couldn't see
Yeah.
me, right? And so it was really important for me to do that. And I did it. I learned a lot, and I literally still get goosebumps when I talk about this.
Hmm.
I still get goosebumps because I enjoyed that so much, and it taught me that it isn't about looks, right? That's a thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it actually has allowed me to do many things that I wouldn't have been able to do. But it's not who I am, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
I'm curious, I think about this and like, especially with the work that we do, it's around like having someone believe in you and see you. Like I can think of a moment when somebody believed me and took a chance on me. Like
sure.
I don't know. As I say that, Mike, like does something come in mind for you as well? Of like somebody like took a chance on you or believed in you?
I would say, yeah, there's been many people that kind of, I always say, kind of put their arm around me and said,
Yeah.
you know, let's go this way, do left hand, don't do right hand, kind of
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would say the mistakes that I made in my life were because I didn't listen to some of those people,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I just didn't listen to them. I thought I knew, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think it's like it's an interesting thing because I think almost all of us can think of somebody that took a chance on us, believed in us, kind of steered us, put their arm around us. And I had a team member, this was a couple months ago, tell me like their story. And they said, look, I would have been homeless if it wasn't for my big sister who let me crash on her couch.
sure.
And she said, what if I didn't have a big sister? How many people don't have a big sister? And she was like, housing connector is that big sister for somebody that doesn't have one. And I always think about that like framing because it's much like even whether like you have perceptions or you don't know around housing issues or whatever it is,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
everyone can understand what it means to have somebody like believe in you and support you and be there for you. And whether it's
yeah.
in business or life, like I think a lot of us like underestimate the power of that. Um, and once you have that, like how much to cherish it.
Yeah, no, you have to. those things are huge, right? They're
Yeah.
and like I said, sometimes they are, well, many times they're life changing, as your story, right? That
Yeah.
person you were talking about, that changed their whole life. I mean, it's like
Literally. Yeah.
literally changed their whole life, like
Yeah. For sure.
trajectory change. I like the direction changed just because of someone, like say, put their arm around them and said, here it is, here's a, here's a bed, here's $100, here's a opening to talk to this guy, here's a, those kind of things, right? I
Yeah.
think those are, yeah. What is the what would you tell, like, what are important pieces to tell? And let's say they're a founder, let's say they're starting a company, whether it's their first or second or third time, that doesn't matter, but what would you
Yeah.
tell them, like, hey, here's a thing that's critical, like critical to just getting the idea off the ground? Because
I- I'm- yeah.
it's not, well, as you said earlier, it is not easy, my friend.
No. No. Everything's working against you. I mean, there's a quote that says you have to be delusional in your vision, like because everyone else is going to be not believing it, so you have to like believe so much.
Yeah,
Um, I think probably the biggest thing and the biggest like thing that I can look at success for us is we just decided to move and try things and get feedback and iterate. And I know that might not work for everyone, but I think that the concern I see, and oftentimes when I talk to folks that are wanting to start something,
sure.
is they're spending so much time thinking about it and talking about it and not enough time doing.
Doing it, yes.
Just do anything, anything. Like like
Yeah,
you want to build a product, just go do it manually for one person. Like every
yeah,
step of it manually and just figure something out. You're going to learn things, you can take that back. And I think that's the piece is like there's lots of people with great ideas and great intentions, but the difference between reality and great intentions is the execution. And you got to take first steps and second steps and just start doing. Um, and I think for us, like that was the big driver is like we just tried things and we made a bunch of dumb mistakes, but they were small mistakes because we were taking small steps, but we were taking steps.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And tell us more details about how you're, like, what's the target, like, who's the target, and where's the value, like, give us some details about that piece.
On the work that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, so we're a nonprofit, Housing Connector is, and we're
Sure.
trying to address the issue of housing insecurity and homelessness. But the way we're thinking about it is how to tap into existing infrastructure. The idea is we need more housing. That's the solution. We're
Yep.
not going to build our way out of the crisis. So how do we make existing infrastructure accessible to people that are being left out? What's
Yep.
different about us, Mike, is we use a business approach to this. So instead of me going to a property owner, a landlord, and saying, do good for the community, I say, here are the ways that we're going to help your bottom line, reduce your costs, and overall increase your revenue.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, you get to help somebody in a neighbor in your community. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the difference is, and so we provide them these insurance products that we fill their units and then provide them insurance. So if somebody ever has a setback, we step in and make them whole
Mhm.
and then
Yep.
increase their retention rate, reduce their turnover, which results in more revenue for them. And then what we do on the other side is we've created a two-sided marketplace in partnership with Zillow that helps automate the matching system when folks are in need of housing. So it looks at not only your preferences, like I want to live in this part of town, but it also
Sure.
looks at your barriers. It says, hey, you have this credit score, you might have some debt. Here are all the units that we've found that have agreed to not only match your preferences, but completely waive your barriers so
Yep.
that when you click apply, you're guaranteed to be approved.
Yeah.
And what this does is it increases the speed that folks are accessing housing, but then it does something else, which is our support keeps people from falling back into homelessness and housing insecurity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that prevention piece is really what unlocks so much of the potential because prevention at best estimates is about 1/30th or 1/40th of the cost of actually treating the disease that is homelessness.
Sure.
And so that's what we're trying to do is create this holistic system that keeps people from losing their housing, helps them get back into units once they do, and ultimately reduces the number of folks that are in that position.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, that is a way to end that. That is a way to end this whole thing. That is a great Great explanation, and the mission is amazing. Like keep doing that.
Thanks, Mike.
Right?
Thanks,
Yeah,
Mike.
just keep doing that. Just keep doing that. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet you and chat with you and hear about your story. But best of luck, and if anything you want to share with the audience, feel free, and we'll end this thing.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for the opportunity. And I think just again, I guess what I would share is don't give up. To all the founders, you never know when that breakthrough could be a day away. Don't give up.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Whose Story Is It? We grow our audience mostly through friends sharing with friends. So please share this with a friend you care about, and of course, share it on your social media. We love that. Also, if you think listening to the podcast was entertaining and valuable, then please subscribe to next week's episode. So keep moving it forward and join us next time as we continue to uncover the extraordinary in the ordinary. Have an amazing day.